How well do you really know the person on the other side of the screen?
Absolutely no clue, No idea in the world that it escalated to this.
For 19-year-old Miranda Corsette, a simple right swipe led to a date she would never return from. What started as an innocent online conversation quickly spiraled into a nightmare.
She was then killed. Mr. Gress placed her body in his car along with his domestic partner Michelle Brandis.
One that left investigators piecing together a chilling mystery. This is the tragic case of Miranda Corsette. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, Bad People, BBP. Today, I'll be discussing a deeply unsettling story that underscores the potential dangers lurking in the world of online dating and the effects of unstable family structures. How does a simple online conversation turn into something unthinkable? That's the question Miranda Corsette's family was left asking when she vanished without a trace. It was February 14th, 2025, Valentine's Day, when the 16-year-old connected with 35-year-old Stephen Gress on the dating app Grindr. Maybe it started with a casual exchange, a few compliments, or a shared joke. He might have told her what she wanted to hear, making her feel understood in a way that felt new and exciting. For Miranda, who was still figuring out life, it may have seemed harmless. But for Gress, it was something entirely different. What exactly drew Miranda to him remains unknown. Maybe he promised adventure, made her feel mature, or simply filled a void she didn't even know existed. What is certain is that she agreed to meet him in person. The first visit didn't raise any alarms. She returned home, continuing life as usual, but something made her go back the next day, and that second visit would be her last. When Miranda didn't come home that day, there was no immediate panic. She was a frequent runaway and mother to an 11-month-old baby, and her grandmother, who had raised her since she was little, assumed she'd be back soon. Maybe Miranda had just lost track of time or was staying with a friend. But as the hours stretched into days, that reassurance faded. Calls went unanswered. Messages were left unread. Something wasn't right. By the 10th day, the weight of reality was undeniable. Miranda wasn't just out somewhere. She was missing. On February 24th, 2025, her grandmother filed a report, and investigators got to work. They retraced her last known whereabouts, following the digital breadcrumbs left behind.
Cops here 24/7 for 3 days.
Her phone history, text messages, and social media activity all pointed to one man, Stephen Gress. But he wasn't alone in this. Another name surfaced,
along with his domestic partner Michelle Brandis.
One that would make the horror of what happened even worse, Michelle Brandis. At first, knocking on Gress's door led nowhere. He claimed he didn't know where Miranda was. Maybe she left, maybe she ran off. He had nothing to do with it. But his words didn't match the growing evidence, and police weren't about to walk away. What had happened inside that house wasn't just a missing persons case anymore. It was something far more terrifying. Gress wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Michelle Brandis, his 37-year-old partner, had been there too. Whatever dynamic they had, it was clear they fed off each other's cruelty. And Miranda? She had walked straight into a trap she never saw coming. The nightmare started with something as insignificant as a missing ring. Maybe it was truly lost, or maybe it was never missing at all. It didn't matter. Gress and Brandis had already decided Miranda was to blame, and in their twisted minds, that accusation meant punishment. What began as verbal threats quickly turned into something far worse.
She was beaten and tortured because they could not find this piece of jewelry.
They didn't let her leave. Every attempt to explain herself fell on deaf ears. The tension in that house must have been suffocating, with Miranda realizing, slowly, then all at once, that she wasn't going home. The doors were locked. The outside world didn't know she was trapped, and her captors had complete control. The abuse escalated. Hours turned into days filled with relentless beatings, psychological torment, and cruelty beyond comprehension. What went through Miranda's mind during those moments? Fear? Desperation? Perhaps the hope that maybe somehow someone would come looking for her. But no one knew where she was. No one knew what was happening behind those walls. Then came the final act of brutality. The details are almost too horrifying to believe, yet they're exactly what investigators uncovered. According to the police, they held the victim against her will for more than 7 days and tortured her by repeatedly beating the victim and eventually stuffing a billiard ball into her mouth and wrapping her face with plastic wrap, causing her to suffocate. But even though Miranda's life was taken, the truth wouldn't stay hidden for long. Investigators were closing in, and the walls around Gress and Brandes were beginning to crumble. What they did to Miranda wouldn't go unanswered, and soon, the horrifying reality of their actions would be exposed. In a desperate attempt to cover up their crime, Stephen Gress and Michelle Brandes devised a gruesome plan. They transported Miranda's body to another location, where they dismembered her remains in an effort to make disposal easier. Every action they took reflected a chilling lack of remorse, turning an already horrific murder into something even more depraved. Authorities later revealed that the couple had placed Miranda's remains in trash bags before dumping them in a nearby dumpster.
They drove her down to Ruskin where they dumped her into a dumpster, and her body is somewhere possibly in a landfill somewhere in that county.
Believing they had erased all evidence of their crime, they went about their lives as if nothing had happened, convinced that no one would uncover the truth. However, their carefully laid plan was about to fall apart. On March 7, 2025, investigators, acting on a tip, searched the area and discovered the remains. The shocking revelation sent waves of horror through the community. What had started as a missing persons case had now become a homicide investigation. The gruesome details of what had happened to Miranda began to emerge, painting a picture of unimaginable cruelty. But while authorities had found her body, they still needed to ensure justice was served. The focus shifted to finding those responsible and holding them accountable for their actions. By the time Miranda's remains were discovered, one of her killers was already in custody.
Okay, don't say any more here.
Stephen Gress had been arrested weeks earlier on unrelated charges involving a harpoon and drug possession. At the time, investigators had no idea he was connected to a murder. However, as evidence mounted, it became clear that Gress was involved in something far worse than his current charges suggested. Michelle Brandes, on the other hand, had initially managed to evade authorities. She knew that the discovery of Miranda's remains would eventually lead back to her, so she went into hiding. But with law enforcement closing in and the weight of the crime pressing down on her, she had nowhere left to run. Eventually, she turned herself in, bringing an end to her brief time on the run. Both Gress and Brandes were charged with first-degree murder. Investigators meticulously pieced together the events leading up to Miranda's death, gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and constructing a case that would leave no room for doubt. They uncovered not just the brutal killing itself, but also the disturbing mindset of the killers. Two individuals who showed no hesitation in taking a young girl's life over something as trivial as a missing ring. Looking back, Miranda Corsette's tragedy didn't begin the night she vanished. It started long before, within the walls of her own home. If she had grown up with a loving mother and father, engaged in ballet or soccer practice, surrounded by structure and supervision, perhaps she would still be here today. Parents, love your children and make them feel valued, especially daughters. We cannot predict the future, but history has shown that unstable homes often lead kids seeking solace elsewhere. And who knows where that could be? Miranda, a frequent runaway and a young mother, was searching for belonging. She turned to the internet, but instead of comfort, she found a predator. There is enough evidence linking unstable family environments to risky behaviors in teenagers. Without support and protection, young girls are especially vulnerable to manipulation and harm.
Definitely feeling safer now that he's off the streets. He was an intimidating fellow.
Miranda's case is a heartbreaking example of a child without a strong foundation at home may look for it in all the wrong places. My heart goes out to Miranda's family and friends during this painful time. I hope her story serves as a reminder of the dangers in the digital world and the importance of vigilance over our children's online interactions. That's all for today. What do you think about this tragic case? Do you believe more could have been done to prevent it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more intense true crime stories. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.